say hopefully nothing bad.
No. Welcome back to the TKO show. It's Kara Rowe, and it's time for our Mindset Success series. I've had so many compliments on this segment. You're just great, Jimmy, and I appreciate you being here. It's Jimmy Graham, our Mindset Success coach. You can find him online, mindpowerprograms.com, because we address so many different things that people are dealing with, right? We talk about people stressing about not having enough money, people stressing about feeling overweight, not having energy, not having confidence, smoking, which is what we'll discuss today. And I thought, we were talked about smoking and you had addressed it to me, and I thought, do people smoke anymore? And then once I became conscious of it, I realized like, wow, here a good friend of mine smokes here, and this relative smokes here, and you see people driving down the street that are young, in fact, which you almost feel like in my brain it's more of an archaic conditioning that people did back in the day, back in World War I, World War II, where they, it was a relief and it created all of this, but it's still today and it's still huge. And when you talk to the, health units across Canada, it's such a huge contributor of disease. And so I think it's really important to talk about, and I'm excited that you're here and willing to do this today.
Well, thanks, Kara. And it's funny, I'm glad you brought that up, because thinking back during the 1900s, especially in the 30s, 40s, 50s, smoking was actually promoted as being fashionable. I mean, you weren't cool, you weren't hip, you weren't trendy unless you had a cigarette in your mouth.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you go back and you watch some old movies and different things like that.
Oh, everybody smoked in those old movies.
You talk to your parents, and Mark makes jokes now. He's like, because my son took a sip of his shake, which had protein powder, and he was like, that's weird. When I was his age, I was secondhand smoking. He's drinking protein powder. What a difference. And we talk about all the time. He says how he remembers driving to Florida, and they were coming from Toronto and driving to Florida, and he said he just was in the deep back. He didn't have seatbelts or anything, and he was in the deep back secondhand smoking all the way down. And it's so different how it's changed. But I know there's people still out there smoking and they want to quit. I just read an article from Sarah Jessica Parker that she was complaining that her lips and her fingers, her teeth, all of these different aspects were yellow, and she just couldn't kick the habit. And so she's like, I literally have to look into bleaching my lips and fingers and different things because
just to get the nicotine stains.
Yes, and she just wants to quit, just can't quit, and so this is such an important topic because there's all different people that this can address. Once I saw my Uncle Bob on oxygen because of all the years that he smoked. Those are the kind of things that are really impactful.
He developed emphysema.
Yeah, and it hit you, like, to see what life would be like. And I don't want anyone listening to experience, anyone's family members to experience that, because it was just so hard to watch, So this is an important topic. And I know the one thing that you do is you kind of dig down to how it started, not just, okay, you're smoking today, let's work on tomorrow. It's, okay, we have to figure this out.
We have to go back to the initial experience when you first got that introduced to a cigarette. Now, the funny thing is that, we're going to get into one situation that pretty well, everybody experienced. But before that, and I'm glad you brought up the whole topic of Mark being in the back seat of his parents' car and they're smoking and that sort of thing, because children learn from the habits of the parents, right? So if a child
This is why I'm very concerned about how my son dances, because he watches Mark dance.
He watches Mark dance.
I keep telling Mark, stop dancing in front of him. Okay.
Well, it might not be a bad thing, but it might be a funny thing at the same time.
True.
But, when kids see parents smoke, and a lot of my clients say, well, my parents smoke. And that's one of the questions on my actually intake form, did your parents smoke? And at least 80-90% of them all say yes, at least one to both parents smoked. And they saw that when they were little kids, so it's almost like monkey see, monkey do.
And that's your superhero, right? Your parents.
Exactly. And it's like, well, if it's great for them and that's what daddy does or that's what mommy does, then that's what I want to do too. So it gets ingrained at a very early age that this is, well, I'm just part of this tribe and that's what we do, so when I get the chance, I'm going to smoke too.
Right, yeah, that's interesting. Now, for those that didn't have that experience where they did see their role models doing this behavior, what has been some of the other things? Why did people actually start? When did they pick up that first cigarette?
Well, I've found, and this is even my own personal experience, I had smoked in the past. I wasn't really a heavy smoker or a daily smoker, but I would smoke socially. But for me, it happened in grade 9 in high school. when I ask my clients, it's always like, oh yeah, I was like 9, 10, 11 years old. The parents smoked, or a friend of theirs' parents smoked, right? And all of a sudden it's like, hey, I found some cigarettes. Do you want one? Right? And you're with your friends, so it's peer pressure, but at the same time you want to fit in. So you don't want to say no, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, what's the harm? It's like, and it feels kind of exciting because you're doing something taboo, right? So that's usually that first experience, that first instance where you just took a drag, and that was that first experience about putting a cigarette in your mouth.
Even if that experience was you coughing up a lung,
well,
and it was awful, and you know.
And I'm glad you brought that up as well, because the funny thing is that only one person has told me different, but everybody else has always gone through this. You take a drag, and your first instinct is like, oh my God, this tastes terrible,
Right.
right? And then you start coughing, and your body rejects it, and it's almost like your brain's going, hey, silly, like, what are you doing? But you don't want to look uncool, so you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And maybe you smoke one, maybe you smoke a half a pack that first instance. But the weird thing is that you feel that sense of connection with that person that you're smoking with, and then they go home, you go home, and then you start almost like psychologically longing for that sense of connection again.
No, it makes
Right?
sense, because if you think of music, like when I hear a song from the 90s, I get a flash of being in university and being at the, pub with all
And
my
it's a good
girlfriends. It's a
time, and-
great feeling.
Yep.
I mean, so you can imagine that you make those associations and they stick, and you don't even realize that that's what the association is.
Well, and there's where the power of the mind really, really needs to be understood, first of all, but it needs to be realized on how powerful these connections can become. Because once those connections starts being made, and then you start reinforcing those connections, then that's what creates the habits.
So essentially, tell me why it's so important to go back to that memory.
I think the very first reason is because most people have forgotten how they even started.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't realize that technically they ran into somebody that was a better hypnotist than themselves, right?
Yeah.
Because if they were the best hypnotist in the world at that point, they would have been just able to say, nope, this is not what I'm doing. But it's a new experience, it's at a young age, and everything is new at that age, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. And you experiment. I mean, you want to try new things at those ages. And then somebody came along and basically convinced you, which is basically hypnosis, giving a suggestion and your mind accepting it, convinced you to accept the suggestion and actually take action upon it.
Which amazes me, because I've been an athlete my whole life. I was trained to think the opposite, that smoking was bad for sports, right? And I didn't have friends that smoked. Anyone who played sports with me, nobody smoked. So, I can see it happening in the reverse, why I've never smoked, right?
Exactly.
It was because I was being trained to think
Well,
it's
and
going to impact me.
and the not smoking was also reinforced by your peers.
Yeah, no, so it's important to go back to identify why you even began, so you can kind of, obliterate that connection, or just reevaluate it at this current time?
It's more reevaluating, because, and this is the thing, I mean, a lot of people just try, on their own, try to avoid negative situations, but they're always within your mind. Your mind has stored that memory as an experience, right? So it's better to, when I hypnotize people in the stop smoking sessions, then I let them become an observer of that whole situation, and then actually relive it in a new, more empowering way.
Oh, interesting.
Where they reframe it as, no, I'm not having a cigarette. I'm in
So
control
they
of my decisions.
kind of go back to that incident
Mhm.
and make different choices, or do it in a different way where they have the power as opposed to the influencer. And that's a new creation in their mind.
Exactly, and this is probably the key thing that I've noticed with all my hypnosis sessions with smokers, is that they have given up the power of decision making, and they've relinquished that power to a little plant that's wrapped in a paper tube,
Yeah.
right? And that's the funny thing, is like they've given up on this, like, I can decide, and I do have power over this, as opposed to this has power over me.
That's amazing. You know why? Because I've heard so many people, when I've talked to them, I said, oh, you quit smoking? They said, yeah, one day I decided I was done. And it's almost like they took their power back, because other people, from what I've heard, what I've read, it's as difficult as heroin to quit. They said it's so many habits you've created through your body, so much addiction you've created through your body, that it's that tough. But then other people, like you said, they just have taken the power back and made the choice, and it just stuck with them. So when we come back from the break, I want to talk about that, habits versus addictions, because this is very interesting to me in the smoking context, because it is something that's legal, so it is accepted essentially out in society. But so how do we, decipher between the habit and the addiction? I know that you also have a program at mindpowerprograms.com. How can people get a hold of the Stop Smoking program?
Well, first of all, there's two things that I'm doing today. I'm giving away a free ebook called 9 Ways to Quit Smoking, and they can just go to mindpowerprograms.com/stop smoking. They can download that ebook for free. And then also my Stop Smoking Hypnosis program, which is regularly $30. If they just put in the promo code BeSmokeFree, they'll get 50% off that program.
Okay, awesome. So mindpowerprograms.com/stop smoking is a free 9-step program.
Free, 9 Ways to Quit Smoking ebook.
Okay, and then the ebook, and then 50% off the hypnosis program. Just put in the promo code BeSmokeFree. So again, that's at mindpowerprograms.com. When we come back, discussing habits versus addictions, we'll talk about various methods of stopping smoking and most effective methods as well. It's Jimmy Graham, our Mindset Success Coach, right here on the TKO Show. Yeah, that's awesome. Welcome back to the TKO Show. At any time, you can text 101290 if you have any questions, or email the TKO Show at bellmedia.ca. It's our Mindset Success series, and we're talking to our Mindset Success coach, Jimmy Graham, and we're talking about stop smoking and smoking cessation. And I know there's a lot of people out there that have tried, and they'll say, I've tried so many different things, and I haven't been able to quit, or you have a family member. I had the Lung Association on once, and it was, for me, it was so impactful, because they were talking about, because we always discuss firsthand smoke, and we know how dangerous it is. Secondhand smoke, also dangerous, which is extremely heartbreaking when you hear about a couple where maybe the husband smokes, the wife doesn't, but she gets lung cancer. Yeah,
yes.
And that's heartbreaking. And then I heard there was third-hand smoke, which is essentially, and I had to mention this to people that I know, because third-hand smoke is what it is. Smoke is on your skin, it's on your clothes, and so if you hold my daughter or you hold my son, they breathe it in, right? They're breathing in that smoke and the chemicals. So third-hand smoke is also dangerous for us, for kids, to be around that environment. So
sure.
It's one of those things where, you really want everyone to be as healthy and safe as possible. So we were talking about, in the first half, how it started. You kind of take everyone back to the first experience and how they were almost essentially hypnotized to think this was a good thing, even though you're coughing up a lung and, it smells bad, your fingers smell bad, your clothes smell bad. And in your first time, you're coughing, but you somehow managed to create that this is a good experience because the other associations.
Yes.
Really interesting. And so I know you can find the program online, mindpowerprograms.com/stop smoking, and you have a free ebook there. Also, the hypnosis program is 50% off right now, so you just put the promo code BeSmokeFree. And so let's talk about, beyond that, habits versus addictions. And how is that with your clients when you have to discuss that, and tell us the difference?
Right, and with smokers, I mean, and I'm not a medical expert, I'm not an addictions counselor, but that being said, the studies that I've done with just reading in and studying about addictions is basically the addictions is more the physical part of it.
Sure, yeah.
And with smokers, obviously, I mean, you're ingesting nicotine, and your body does get dependent upon that in a certain way. But studies have also shown that you can clear out that nicotine within 2 or 3 days by just simply drinking a lot, like just flushing out your system, eating healthy, drinking lots and lots of water, and just flushing that nicotine out of your system. So, maybe even up to a week. But then that nicotine is gone, so long as you don't put any more back in your body. The habits, on the other hand, are the things that you get up in the morning, and it's all of the smokers I've dealt with, it's almost like it's the same habitual habits all the time. They get up, coffee, cigarette.
Yep.
Get in the car, drive to work, have a cigarette. Break time comes, go outside, have a cigarette. And it just becomes this routine that gets reinforced day in and day out and day in and day out.
And routine is comfortable, for
yes,
sure.
and some of the smokers that I deal with, I go, how many cigarettes do they smoke? And they go, well, probably a pack. And I said, how many do you remember smoking? And they go, I don't know, 3 or 4.
Right, no,
right?
that's a good call.
Because they don't even realize they're doing it.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. And you think of how many habits are created, like you said, the drive to work, the lunch, the needing a break at work, and your brain first and foremost says, oh, I need a smoke break. Because you just need a breather from
Well,
work. You know?
and there's another thing too, is that it's funny the language that is used, right, in relation to the habit. Like I'm going to take a smoke break as opposed to a break, right? I'm going to get a breath of fresh air. Meanwhile, they're taking a cigarette and putting it in their mouth.
Yeah.
It's just funny how they use language to kind of reinforce those habits as well.
Now, for you, is that something that you tackle as well? Like you take them back and you go through this hypnosis, but is it something also, do you have to hypnotize them to create new habits? Or is that something you just, a discussion and suggestions on how they have to kind of change things up and evaluate how they are leading their life now?
Yes, definitely, because we are creatures of habits. I mean, you can't eliminate a habit without replacing it with another one. Because this is why so many smokers fail to quit long term, is because they let go of the smoking habit, but they don't replace it with anything else. So one of the clients, actually, I just got a call from her the other day. She had already smoked or quit for over 3 or 4 months from just one session, which was fabulous. And her trigger was every time she went out on break, she had to have a cigarette. And I said, great, go outside. Go right to where you smoked. Don't smoke. Just pretend that you are.
Okay.
And she started doing that, and after a while she was like, I don't even want to smoke anymore. Like, this feels totally silly.
Yeah.
But she replaced that, just putting the cigarette in her mouth, taking a drag on it, just by just mimicking it and taking nice deep breaths. She went back into work. She said, wow, I felt amazing because I was almost re-energized with all that oxygen I took in.
Yeah, you know, and I get that act of taking your hand, putting it to your mouth, putting it back down. I mean, just all these habits have been. And so, what have been some of the different methods that people have used, and what are the most effective methods?
Well, let's start there. The most effective method is that something that you already mentioned. Believe it or not, is just quitting cold turkey. Now, why that is that because people have made a decision and took their power back.
Right.
To say, listen, that's it, no more. I'm the one in control over my decisions, as opposed to my mind making decisions for me unconsciously. The other methods, I mean, there's the patches, there's the gums, there's the prescription drugs. All of those are, have their varying degrees of effectiveness. The problem is that say with patches or gum, you're still putting nicotine into your system, and you're not changing that habit of picking up a cigarette, taking it out of the pack, lighting it up, putting it in your mouth. So, I mean, they've got varying degrees of effectiveness, but the second greatest effective method is hypnosis, because what you're doing is you're changing your thought patterns around the act of smoking.
I'm telling you, I get it. The reason I get it is because when I was pregnant, and I've mentioned this before, when I was pregnant, and in my brain, because my one vice is Diet Pepsi, right? So, but in my brain,
I got a program for that, by the way.
Oh, do you? I don't want it. I want to keep drinking. No, but I had told my brain when I was pregnant, I can't have that because of the aspartame.
Mm-hmm.
So when I looked at Diet Pop, I was like, I felt ill, like I was going to throw up just by looking at it when I was pregnant. As soon as I wasn't pregnant anymore, I was like, I was completely fine with it, which is, and I didn't realize I had done that until I had seen just the adverse reaction that I had when I looked at it versus after I gave birth, and probably the first thing I asked for was...
Smokers, unfortunately, are the same way too, because they will find out that they've got cancer, and they will quit. Cold turkey, done. Nothing more. And then they'll go in, they'll do their surgery, they'll do their treatments, then they're better, then they go right back to smoking.
Really,
it's like, I've solved the problem, I beat it, good, now I can go back to it.
Yeah, the power of the mind. I mean, it's essential that we get a hold of this. Great information. Thank you, Jimmy, for joining me today.
My pleasure, Kara.
Once again, Jimmy Graham, my mindset success coach, is sharing all his wisdom with you. You can find him online, mindpowerprograms.com, a variety of different programs for any need that you have. You can go to the program, go /stop smoking. There's a free ebook there for you. And the hypnosis program is 50% off today, and the promo code is BeSmokeFree. A lot of great information. It's Kara on the TKO Show.